Hello, world. Welcome back to another episode from Beyond the Matrix. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to be talking about Mars because it's Mars's day. So, Mars here is in the sign of Gemini and slowly picking up speed from having been retrograde from Halloween until the turn of this year, the Gregorian New Year. And Mars is this planet of action. It is the god Ares, so also the god of war. And it can also signify our desires, our passions, the things that we're willing to go to war for, you could say. And in the sign of Gemini, it's a very cerebral sign. It's an air sign. It can also signify our relationships with siblings, neighbors, cousins, because it's the archetype of the twins. But it can also be early childhood, things to do with how we learn, trivia, tricks. So the energy of Mars and Gemini can be quick thinking, lots of thoughts, perhaps even arguments between siblings, cousins, neighbors. This can be taking action plans or planning actionable steps. So, and it can also manifest as somewhat frustrating because it's spent such a long time in Gemini. When Mars is at speed, it can move through a sign per month, but it's spent nearly 6 months in the sign of Gemini already. So it's felt very frustrating. Mars will be opposing the moon, our emotions, on Wednesday. And the moon in the sign of Sagittarius wants to be free to explore and is wanting to expand. And Mars by that point will move a degree forward. So they're going to meet at 14 degrees. So that's good news that Mars is moving along. With oppositions, this is two planets working towards two different goals. So Mars might be trying to get really methodical in the sign of Gemini, where the moon isn't really looking at the details. It's just taking broad strokes. It's looking at the bigger picture and wanting to get out and dream big. By the time we move into Sunday, the moon will be trining Mars, and trines are things falling into place. They feel very natural. So the moon is in the sign of Aquarius. It's the very detached moon. It wants to maybe serve the collective or be in some way, in its own unique way, serving humanity. So it will detach itself from its own personal desires. And Mars in Gemini, thought-provoking sign of Gemini. So this looks to me like creating, innovating, inventing, coming up with some kind of idea or some sort of idea just kind of falling in your lap. And also Mercury is moving into a trine position with Mars. Mercury is the homeowner, you could say, of the place where Mars currently is. And Mercury is also in an air sign, which is why there's a trine here. And that's to say that all the fire signs are in a trine, all the air signs are in a trine, all the earth signs are in a trine, and all the water signs are in a trine. So they're of the same element. That's why it feels like things are falling into place. And with Mercury moving into a trine with Mars in Gemini, Mercury is the planet of messages and communication. And it's in this sign of Aquarius that's the humanitarian. So this adds to the planning and inventing energy. And that trine starts to close even more as we move into Monday. And by Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, just after the new moon, Mercury will be in a trine with Mars even closer, while Mars is squaring the moon in Pisces. So the moon in Pisces is very dreamy, intuitive, spiritual, mystical, and perhaps really moody, emotional. So that's in a square with Mars. Mars, this planet that is trying to make plans with Mercury in Aquarius. We're trying to be inventive, trying to create, trying to come up with new things. And it looks like we can veer off a little into the other world, you could say, into the imagination. And it's beautiful, but it seems to be working at odds with what it is that Mars and Mercury are trying to build here. Maybe we're getting a little too emotionally invested in the project or in the relationship or whatever it might be. It's important to consider the houses that Mars rules as well when we're thinking about the week for Mars, when we're considering Mars's movement. And it's picking up speed a lot. I mean, we're moving a couple of degrees now, so finally starting to move along with the plan. And Mars rules Aries and Scorpio in traditional astrology. So if you have any planets or placements in Aries and Scorpio, it's probably going to feel like things are starting to move along, things are picking up speed. There's action happening, particularly in Aries. In the sign of Aries, there's a lot of action. Venus will have moved into this sign. There's a lot of creativity with Venus in Aries. It's the planet of love, creativity, sisterhood, moving into this fiery sign of action and independence. And Jupiter is approaching Chiron, the wounded healer. So it can feel very cathartic because Jupiter is this planet about, of course, expansion, expanding beyond borders, beyond the intellectual landscape. So philosophy is approaching this wounded healer, Chiron. And that's a wound around our individuality. And also Vesta. Vesta here, eldest of the Olympians. She's Zeus's eldest sister that was born first, but was devoured by her father. And so she is the keeper of the hearth. She is the one that held the fire for her siblings and was the last to be expelled from the bowels or the stomach of her father. So there's a lot about keeping the fire. Fire signifies knowledge and wisdom. So I have this Shakespeare quote. It's from Love's Labour's Lost to kind of describe the energy that's happening in Mars's house. And yeah, so I'm just going to read that. Byron. 'Tis more than need. Have at you then, affections, men at arms. Consider what you first did swear unto, to fast, to study, and to see no woman. Flat treason against the kingly state of youth. Say, can you fast? Your stomachs are too young, and abstinence engenders maladies. And where that you have vowed to study, lords, in that each of you have forsworn his book, Can you still dream and pore and thereon look? For when would you, my lord, or you, have found the ground of study's excellence without the beauty of a woman's face? From women's eyes this doctrine I derive. They are the ground, the books, the academies. From whence doth spring the true Promethean fire? Why universal plotting poisons up the nimble spirits in the arteries, as motion and long-during action tires the sinewing vigor of the traveler? Now for not looking on a woman's face, you have in that forsworn the use of eyes, and study too the causer of your vow. For where is any author in the world teaches such beauty as a woman's eyes? Learning is but an adjunct to ourself, and where we are, our learning likewise is. Then when ourselves we see in ladies' eyes, do we not likewise see our learning there? Oh, we have made a vow to study, lords, and in that vow we have forsworn our books. For when would you, my liege, or you, in leaden contemplation have found out such fiery numbers as the prompting eyes of beauty's tutors have enriched you with? Other slow arts entirely keep the brain, and therefore, finding barren practisers, scarce show a harvest of their heavy toil. But love, first learned in a lady's eyes, lives not alone immured in the brain, but with the motion of all elements, courses as swift as thought in every power, and gives to every power a double power, above their functions in their offices. It adds a precious seeing to the eye. A lover's eyes will gaze an eagle blind. A lover's ear will hear the lowest sound. When the suspicious head of theft is stopped, love's feeling is more soft and sensible than are the tender horns of cockled snails. Love's tongue proves dainty Bacchus gross in taste, for valor is not love a Hercules, still climbing trees in the Hesperides. Subtle as Sphinx, as sweet and musical as Apollo's lute, strung with his hair, and when love speaks, the voice of all the gods make heaven drowsy with the harmony. Never durst poet touch a pen to write until his ink were tempted with love's sighs. Oh, then his lines would ravish savage ears and plant in tyrant mild humility. From women's eyes this doctrine I derive. They sparkle still the right Promethean fire. They are the books, the arts, the academies that show, contain, and nourish all the world. Else none at all in aught proves excellent. Then fools you were, these women to forswear, or keeping what is sworn, you will prove fools, for wisdom's sake, a word that all men love, or for love's sake, a word that loves all men, or for men's sake, the authors of these women, or women's sake, by whom we men are men. Let us once lose our oaths to find ourselves, or else we lose ourselves to keep our oaths. It is religion to be thus forsworn, for charity itself fulfills the law, and who can sever love from charity? So that's where I'm going to leave it. All of this happening in the sign of Aries, which is a Mars ruled sign, kind of led me to that quote. And yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, in this story, the men here are swearing off women to study. They want to become wise. And so they're taking time off from the ladies. And of course, it's a comedy. So Mars is sextiling all that. So there's an opportunity in there, right? It's kind of funny. Yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. Do with that what you will. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about Mercury, which we did a lot of talking about Mercury today, too. Probably won't be too much difference, but I'll definitely have something else to read. So I hope you'll join me then. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And tomorrow's a nice day. So I'll see you then.